Hello and welcome to another episode of TesterSpeak Season 2. And you're watching this on the Test Chat YouTube channel with your host, Brajesh Deep. Now, with me is somebody whom I have been following for quite some time. And through her conference talks, through her posts, through whatever work she does for the testing community, she has come out as a powerhouse of knowledge, a powerhouse of experience. And what impresses me the most is her candid way of talking about things. She's absolutely fantastic at that. So I don't want to hold you any longer. It gives me a lot of pleasure in welcoming to the show Erika Chestnut. Welcome, Erika.
Hi, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction.
Well, Erika, it's indeed a pleasure to have you here. I mean, having followed your work for the past few years, it's an exciting opportunity for me to get to talk to you one-on-one, and I'm sure a lot of testers would be looking forward to this conversation. So I um, I know that you've been on a multiple, in your journey as in your career, you've been through a lot of roles. But how did you end up being a tester?
I actually wound up being a test leader as opposed to coming in as an individual contributor. I started my career as a developer. I was developing in classic ASP. I pivoted when .NET rolled out and was well on my way with certifications, Microsoft certifications, and leading development teams, and was kind of humming along, if you will, in that space. But I complained about quality a lot, apparently. So I was talking about it. I was trying to find new ways to or ways to introduce it within the company, or just like, how do we address quality? Like, why do we have these issues? What's happening with them? And I had a conversation with the founder of the company that I was at the time about this opportunity to work with moms to bring them in to test some of our landing pages, which were just it was the original version of what a one pager is today. But the landing page for marketing, and wasn't a lot of functionality, just content showcasing some type of product that they wanted to sell. So the idea was that it would be an easy lift for moms to come in and test that, because it was a lot of it was it was subjective, but it was straightforward in that sense, right? Or it could be straightforward, so it wasn't subjective, is really what I meant to say. Um, but in the midst of that, conversations about opportunities like that, so I just began to be interested and vocalize that interest in quality and how we can improve it. And at some point, they came to me and said, "Okay, well, you should open up our quality department." And I said, "Well, no, thank you. I'm good." um, and we just continued to talk about it. And next thing I know, I'm saying yes to starting a quality department and figuring out how to bring that in to the organization. What did that look like? Because I had no clue. I had never worked with a quality department or team. And so what did that look like? How did it look to engage? And that was kind of the start of my career in quality.
Awesome. I mean, I also started off not as a developer, but as a content developer, transitioned to a developer, and then to a testing role. So,
Nice.
this little bit about complaining about quality, I think you did the right thing in complaining about quality because now you're here talking to me. So,
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
so,
yeah.
no. See, this is exactly what I was talking about, in the introduction. That when you start describing your journey, you are so candid. You're so cool about it, and this is something that I really admire. And I'm
Thank you.
sure people who have heard your conference talks or your podcasts that you've been on would actually relate to what I'm saying. So thank you for doing this, and thank you for being so amazing like you are. So
Thank you.
the next question that comes to my mind, and this is because you are now heading the quality, or you are head of quality at one of the uh, I would safely say one of the best products that I am using currently. Okay, and that's Calendly. And my experience with Calendly has been amazing. A lot of thought has gone behind, you know, creating that first of all, creating that application, and then, the way things have been put into place. I can see that quality has been baked into it right from the word go, the requirements, the design, and things like that.
Yeah.
So how has your journey been with that, and how is that like?
Callumly is awesome. The product, it's really fun to work on a product that so many people touch or are familiar with, right? And it's interesting to over the last 2 years, as I have conversations, more and more people my conversations are less like, yeah, I work for Callumly. Oh, what's that? And it's more, I work for Callumly. Oh, I've heard about it, or oh, I use it, or oh, my wife or my husband, or whomever uses it, and they say they love it. So it's so interesting to see, the progression of the company and the product, and how people use it, and just scheduling as this thing, right, that we all have to do. Um, and how we were all missing this
Yeah.
tool to help us do it more efficiently. Very interesting, right? So when I joined Callumly, very small. The company was much smaller than what we are today, and we scaled up very quickly. But small team. There's only 4 QE team members. They were oversourced and underutilized with regards to their skills. Um, and the thing that I love about it is that the quality team at the time, they were advocating for a leader to come in. They were part of the engineering organization, and we still are part of the technology organization. But what they recognized is that they did not have a leader that had a seat at the table in the conversation. They did not have somebody that could advocate for their interests and for the growth of quality in the organization. And so they said we're oversourced and underutilized, or undervalued, and not intentionally. And there are some organizations where it's very intentional, but they just didn't have somebody driving that conversation. And so they advocated for themselves. And I love to tell people that, because I think it's important for individual contributors to realize that they can create the change that they want to see for quality within the organization. If it's not going the direction that you want, or if you see it could be so much more, advocate for it, speak up about it. You never know, you might wind up with somebody saying, well, if you're going to complain about quality so much, then why don't you do it? Maybe they'll say that to you. But when I started, that's where we were. But one of the great things that I saw when I came in was that the company had a lot of really great things going for them. Callumly was humming along as a ship in the right direction. Oftentimes when I've come into organizations, big or small, it's we've got to turn the ship to go in the right direction. We
Mhm.
need to put in better processes. But we were already doing, automation. We already had a strong pipeline, a lot of good DevOps strategy and infrastructure in place already. So it was about coming in and creating the efficiencies, and um, changing some of the mindset around quality and how we own, and getting the quality team really built up and leveraged fully. Um, so that's what I've had the opportunity to do over the last few years within the organization, and we're at another pivotal point where we're saying, let's broaden the scope of quality. What does it look like? How do we seat ourselves in the conversation outside of the test step, and getting better about owning the process and the standards and the policies across the organization that drive quality.
Right. So, when I got in touch with you, and then, we were trying to get a meeting scheduled, and you sent me a Calendly link. And I was like, yeah, yeah, Erika works for Calendly, so this is okay. Maybe someday when she asks me for a time, I will send her the Calendly link.
I give
So
people cool points. If they send me a Calendly link, I'm like, you get cool points. They send me one of those other links. I tell them, I'm like, really, you're going to make me use that product to schedule a meeting? Stop it. Stop it. You've lost cool points. Yeah, totally do that.
So no. Anyways, I mean that part was awesome. So now, so if you had the opportunity to be a part of the Calendly journey much earlier, or let me put it another way. If there is a new product, okay, coming up, and you are the leader of the QA quality team, what would be the steps that you would take so that
Mm.
the 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 ride is much smoother? And I'm
Yeah.
asking this on behalf of all new leaders who are transitioning into this kind of a role, you know, becoming leaders
Sure.
in organizations which are.
So those are actually two different buckets. So if you have a leader that's transitioning into this role, and there's something that exists, you must do discovery. You need to and in discovery you need to focus on relationship building, because you need to have the relationship and trust so that you can then leverage, so that you have the opportunity to have influence over those people, because you now have a relationship and trust with them, so that you can leverage them. Because you have influence, you can leverage them to socialize quality standards, processes, and policies within their area of business. Right. So you want to build that chain, and you do that regardless. But if there's an existing entity, right, there's existing structure, you want to push that, you want to leverage those things: relationship and trust, influence, and leverage of that influence. When you're And then doing discovery. So I was saying, as part of discovery, you're building those relationships. But during that discovery phase, you're going on a listening tour. You're finding out not just what are the problems, but what is the solution that's in place today? What are the standards? And I'm going to say this a lot: standards, processes, and policies. What are they? Because those are the things that are going to drive quality, right? And one of the things in my career that I've seen over time and time again is that we don't connect process to quality. And so we have, as an industry, tech industry, and even as a community, we've pushed ourselves into this silo of the test step. And we are talking mostly about automation and technology in that test step. But the thing is that if we go back to the technical term, garbage in, garbage out,
Yeah.
what's coming into that? What's feeding that? That is part of the quality experience. And so when we set those standards, and we set the expectation with those standards, and then we have a process in place that says, what are the touch points to achieve those standards? What are the artifacts that are needed? What's needed to come into automation, into that test step, for it to be valuable and efficient? So we don't have flaky specs, we have the appropriate coverage. And then what are the policies on the other side of things like that? How do we measure that? How do we make sure that we're meeting the standards? And then assess, if we're not meeting the standards, what processes do we need to change to meet those standards? And then just continue to loop on that. It's a big Venn diagram at that point, right? And so when you're talking about quality, if you're looking at these things and saying standards, processes, and policies to drive that, and that's in both buckets, whether you are a brand new, fresh organization and you're saying, hey, we want to build quality, a culture of quality very early on, or if you're coming into an organization that exists, what is there today in those buckets, and how is it improving or impacting quality? And then you want to talk to the appropriate people. If you're leading it from a new organization, you're in a great space, because you can say, this is the expectation, this is how we want to do this. So when you bring in ahead of this or ahead of that, hey, you need to make sure that we're aligned on what the standards and expectations are. What are the touch points? How are we folding you into the organization and making sure that everybody is clear on that, so that we achieve the goals that we want? If that doesn't exist, or if you have an entity and that doesn't exist, you want to look for those. Who are the people that you need to develop those relationships with and build trust with, and help to influence what the standards should be, and how, and developing the processes so that you can achieve those standards. So that's what I would say is like it's standards, processes, and policies, defining, developing, and driving them. And you do that through relationship, trust, and influence.
Excellent. I mean, this is something that I can very well relate to. In my journey as a tester, I have been in situations where I have had to build up teams and build up the entire organization getting towards testing, and
Hmm.
I focused a lot on these relationships. Well, I have been in situations where there was a process existing already, and you're absolutely right that when you know treat that test step in a silo, the focus tends to shift more towards automation, and
Yeah.
that's when chaos starts building up.
Yeah.
Now, when the moment I start talking about automation, there is this whole different world which talks about, oh, manual versus automation, blah blah. Now, I heard your talk. I do not know exactly which conference it was, but it was about the death of manual testing. Is manual testing dead or
Yeah.
yeah? So, is it really dead?
No.
Okay, does it exist at the first place?
In some companies it does. But again, it's it's undervalued. The and that's I really loved Kirk Walton's phrasing of humanual testing because it's not we've taken manual testing and said it is the testing only of the UI by an individual. But it's so much more than that. It's requirements, it's process and flows and diagrams, and it's artifacts that we deliver as part of the engagement of what we're trying to build and understanding that. One of the things that I talk about is developers putting on blinders, rightfully so. They're trying to take a human conversation and turn it into ones and zeros for the computer to understand. You but then we rely on automation to validate that it translates back to a human conversation.
Yeah.
And there's just something that just doesn't quite connect with me on that because you've put another group of people in a silo with blinders on to speak to the computer in ones and zeros. And we're not saying, okay, we should be working with humans along the way to validate, and what are the ways that we're validating it. So if you're saying ones and zeros automation at the end of the journey, what other human interactions are you putting up along the way to make sure that the translation of the conversation leading into, or the lead up to the translation of that conversation to ones and zeros is exactly what we want, right? That lead up, so that you don't have your developer going back and making making a decision in a silo saying, I believe this is what this means, or two, having to go back and forth with product to understand it, and still possibly having a breakdown in communication. How do we clean that process up so that, yeah, at the end we can have the machine do it because we're 100% sure that it is exactly what we wanted? What is that process leading up to that?
Well, okay. That was a beautiful response, but I want
Oh,
to give you a little bit of a background.
okay.
Okay. So a few months ago, or rather a year ago, I wrote a post on LinkedIn where, because I was really irritated by a lot of people trying to look down upon manual testing, and this
Yeah.
a lot of testers were frustrated saying, oh, we are manual testers, we don't have a growth path, and it's dying, and people are simply, they don't respect us, and
Hmm.
in our organizations also we are facing a lot of challenges. So I was so frustrated. I started writing the post, and I went on to say, "Look, guys, when you're talking about testing, it is testing. Okay.
Hmm.
Yes, there is a piece which is done using, or there is some execution or some tests which are executed using certain scripts which are run on a computer. Okay, but you are still testing. So
Yes.
don't bifurcate it between manual and automation. And I went on to say, there is nothing called manual testing.
Mm.
And as the challenge has been with LinkedIn, LinkedIn posts are limited to 1,300 characters. And I was exceeding the character limit by 2, 3 characters. So what I did was I combined these words, nothing called manual testing, and put a hashtag before that.
That's great.
Well, so hashtag nothing called manual testing. And if you go to my LinkedIn, you will see that on my headline as well. And that post became viral. Okay. Within hours, people started calling me and saying, "Hey, you've written something." And I was like, hang on, what is going on? And then I realized, and then people started asking me, what is it? What is it that you're trying to say? Can you elaborate? And I said, see, yes, we want to, you know, segregate testing based on people's skills. For example, I am a UI tester, or I am a UX tester, or a performance tester, or a security tester. But the moment you say I am a manual tester, you're not
Mhm.
testing manuals. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my thought process. And the moment we start recognizing everybody as tester
Mm.
or somebody who advocates quality, you are resolving this problem of manual testing dying or not. Yes, at certain points you will need certain scripts or certain tools that will help you enhance your efficiency, productivity. But then at the same time, you cannot ignore the part where you need humans, because
Mhm.
if you have done a test, you have some results from that test, and you need somebody to analyze those. Who will do the analysis? Who will ask the questions?
Mhm.
Basically, you need somebody to ask the questions. Who will design those experiments that you do? When you're testing, you design experiments and you run those experiments. Who will do that? You still need a person. The day when machines become so efficient that they can do all of this, I will, delete that hashtag. But until then, until then, that remains.
Yeah.
So that is my perspective. But what you have said is also very beautiful. The way you put it is absolutely awesome. Okay. So people need to understand that this translation of the conversation going into a machine where in which understands only ones and zeros, and then getting it back into again something that humans understand, because humans are going to use it.
Mhm.
That human factor cannot be ignored, and you put it so beautifully, Erika. Thank you for
Yeah.
for saying that, and thank you for adding to what I have been advocating all this long. And that is the reason, when I heard that conference talk of yours, I was like, this is exactly what I've been saying, but this is being said so beautifully. So I need to, capture this. And thankfully a recording is available, so people can go check out that talk. In fact, you also gave a shorter version of that when you spoke at I think
Netflix.
testflix
Mhm.
testflix
That was so
where
hard, like taking that talk, and I think I got it down to 11 minutes, and we're like, I'm sorry, we're gonna need it down to 8. And I said, oh my goodness, okay. But the message, I don't know if I could get the message packaged.
no, but those of you who want to listen to the summary of that talk, I'm going to put Erika's link to Erika's talk in testflix in the description. And I want to thank my friends at the Test Tribe community, Mahesh and his entire team, for doing that, for
Awesome.
getting that piece of wisdom from Erika in 8 minutes. I know it was difficult for you, but
There were a
but but
lot
it
of great
but it
talks.
makes but it makes a lot of sense, and especially for testers like me who are agitated with conversations around manual testing versus automation testing,
Yeah.
and people going gaga over tools, forgetting about everything else in this world. Well, for
It's
me,
a tool. It's a tool in a toolbox. We are the people that wield those tools. A sword cannot fight. A hammer cannot ham. Right? You can't. A hammer can't do it by itself. You need people to wield those tools. And when you look at, I was thinking while you were telling me kind of your view of it. yes, all testers, but business leaders are going to say, but I need a security tester. I
Right.
need a performance tester. So you still have these specialties that arise, even
Exactly.
automation testers. Where I think the problem comes in is that you have those types of testers that then look down on manual testing within our community, which is sad because you yourself should be doing that. You should have that type of testing in your toolbox. Like
Correct.
you should not expect to, I've seen teams where they have SDETs that are siloed and they lean heavily on analysts or manual testers to tell them what's needed because they put their blinders on and they don't think that they have to engage the product that way, but it is a disservice to what they are providing if they don't understand the product that way, if they're not able to manually test the product. They miss opportunities and their test suites are not nearly as powerful as they could be because they lack that comprehension without somebody telling them.
Right.
So yeah, it's like, yeah, you can be testers and still have a specialty, but recognizing that there needs to be a balance. There needs to be a balance of how you engage the system. It cannot just be, I only do security testing, I only do performance, I
Right.
only build automation scripts.
Right. Absolutely. So talking a little bit more about automation. Now, you mentioned that, when you joined Calendly, you already had, you know, a pipeline that was ready, which means that there was some level of automation in place. How easy or how difficult is it to get automation integrated into the whole testing process? Now, you've also mentioned about, you know processes, standards, and policies, or if I'm putting them in the right order. But how do you integrate that, the entire automation thing, into your processes, standards, and policies, and
Sure. So
make it very smooth?
yeah. So I came in and we have a ton of automation in place. And our developers actually deliver automation today, end-to-end automation. And it's something that we're working to change because we want to balance our pyramid. Our pyramid is completely inverted at this point. And so we're very top heavy. And that is a byproduct of how we grew, where the priorities were, what the easy thing was to do to cover that gap around automation and still have not have a need for a formal test team, and just setting the expectation or the standard that developers are expected to deliver automation as part of their deliverable, and it goes through code review just like development does. The gap there was those were all in small bucket silos with blinders on, right? And so there's duplication, there's redundancy, there is um, lack of oversight across the suite. And so where there were opportunities to integrate into test, expand or even reduce in areas, those were not always leveraged because you have, company scaling. Even on the early stages, it's like, okay, well, I'm working on my thing and you're working on your thing. I don't have time to connect this. I just need to make sure that this is right. And I'll throw this test in, right? So there's cleanup that's needed. Having a standard in place says what that expectation is. All right, well, we have a structure for our automation that's built upon, let's say, capability and feature, which is what we're talking about within our organization. And then how does everybody talk about that? Does product talk about capability and feature the same way that engineering does? Quality, sales. All right, so we're all speaking the same language. That's a standard. So now you're saying, okay, I'm building in a capability, I'm building in a feature in this area, and I am also plugging in new tests, and I'm aligning it with the way that we talk about it, that standard. I'm aligning with the standard. So now that you've aligned with the standard, you're able to quickly see, oh, there's a test that already aligns in this space. I just need to plug into it. So now, because you've set a standard and a structure and a process, you're able to improve quality. And quality is not just the deliverable, it is how you deliver. or the structure that you're delivering in. So the structure of your test automation suite, do you have quality in that? And that's the thing that I keep trying to put position out there. Quality is so much bigger than the test step. It is
Right.
it's about, do we have quality in the actual deliverable? Do we have quality in the way that we deliver? And do we have quality in the process that we deliver in? And really saying, okay, let's own that conversation.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I mean, uh, once we recognize that quality is not something that is only with regards to the product that you're doing, but it has so much more to it. I think that's when we will make absolute sense. And thank you again for saying that so wonderfully. See, this is exactly what I was hoping uh, this conversation would be like, because I have I've said a lot of things, and I hear people saying a lot of things. But when I listen to you say probably the same thing, but you make it sound so wonderful. So so I'm loving every bit of this conversation already.
Yeah.
And in the past couple of discussions that we've had before this, I was like, yeah, yeah, okay.
We got on a call and like I think we just had synergies. We have very similar beliefs and just views of how much quality organizations can really, how we can impact and how we can empower and enable. And that's the big thing, is how do you enable others to lead quality? And
Right,
that's where I got to: standards, processes, and policies, and then step out of the way. Because as long as you set those and then you're measuring them and monitoring them, right, you're putting in place the opportunity for people to lead. You're empowering them, that they don't have to think about it. They understand what the standard is, what the expectation is, and they understand how to meet it. They're going to go do it because
right.
you've told them what it is. They don't have to guess. And then nobody has to feel like, if it's not met, we see it and we know how to correct it because we've laid out the foundation for how to achieve it.
Well, so talking about quality and we've spoken about manual testing, spoken about automation. Um, Now, do you think, in your belief, that you know fitting the whole testing and quality thing in the DevOps, or with relation to the DevOps culture,
Mhm.
it's quite a bit of challenge, or do you think it's a very smooth thing that it'll just come along and tag along, and what has been your experience with that?
It can be a challenge if you don't have the support system to build the infrastructure for it. Because to plug in quality, I mean, DevOps is about lean and fast. And so you need infrastructure, and you do need automation as a tool to push into that. But you have to have that infrastructure. You have people, either people on the quality team that do that, or the infrastructure and platform team that manages that, and that partnership to build in that structure, to build in services and tools for the quality team, like test harnesses, data harnesses, right? Mock services. How do we get those tools that we build, and how do we make sure that we have the time to build them, if we're building them ourselves, or that the engineers have the time, as a partners, to build those, and they know that that's a part of their expectation. That is something that is required as part of delivery to be able to set this up. So it's more about the partnerships and everybody understanding, like, this is a part of the DevOps conversation, is how we build in this quality layer from to be able to integrate in.
So going back, talking a little more about manual testing and manual testers, do you see them fitting in the DevOps world, or is it only about automation?
I do. I absolutely believe that manual testing fits in that conversation, because how do you know what you need? Like, what mock service do you need if you don't have a tester that's going through and that says, I've tested the removal of this partner or service that we're calling in, and I can't test this. Or I am working through, I'm building out the strategy, and I know that you're building this single service, but this service requires this thing. How am I going to get it? That they're asking those questions. You talked about that, right? Like they're asking those questions to understand where are the failures? How do you test something? Or even if you're saying, okay, well, developers can see that. Are they talking about it? Because the developers are focused on they're saying, hey, I need to build this thing. Are you assured that your developer is also going to talk about how they need to test it fully and how it continues to be tested fully once it's done, not just, okay, well, I was able to throw this up temporarily. Is this going to stand up? Is this what is that strategy going forward? So yeah, I absolutely, manual testers are needed everywhere in every conversation.
Awesome. And this should be a big message for all the testers who think that they are stuck in this rut called manual testing and they don't have any future because of DevOps or whatever. Listen to what Erika just said. Okay, don't lose hope, number one. Number two, listen to what she said. And if you still have doubts, talk to her. You will
Call me on LinkedIn.
understand. Yeah, you will understand that, yeah, there is still a lot of value in the work that you do. So don't undermine yourself and get and feel that I'm stuck in this big hole called manual testing and I have no future and it's dead and DevOps has eaten away my job or anything like that. Don't feel that way. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's one message. Thank you again, Erika, for talking about it. Now I want to go back to an interesting conversation, and it was in a different community, and this was thanks to our good friend Tristan. Tristan, a big shout out to you for
Yay.
Tristan community. You, yes. So there was a very interesting conversation that was going on, and I think it was Sarah Miller who asked this question about culture of quality or quality of culture of quality. Okay, and what you had written there about your views on culture of quality was something that I was really impressed because a lot of testers wrote about it. So, what is your perception of culture of quality? How do you build that culture?
I wish I remembered what I wrote.
That's why I asked you. It's from a few months ago. Yeah. So
I'm going to contradict what I said. Quality is a culture of quality in an organization.
Yeah.
Is not a single test step. And I think that's the biggest thing that I see is that technology in the community has siloed, has narrowed the focus of quality to a test step. And the test step is a function inside of quality assurance. It's inside of it. And a culture of quality is much broader. It's all the things that we've talked about, right? Like if you like your question earlier, and I didn't actually say this, it kind of popped in my head and I let it go. But if you're building a new organization and you put quality in the middle and you say quality is the thing that it's one of our core values. And you're saying, all right, how do we're all of our goal is that end deliverable. But a sales team has a different quality experience. What do they need? And they still need it from engineering. They need to understand the product. They need to understand the upcoming product. They need to understand the roadmap so that they can go sell it or so that they can start to build relationships with certain organizations or people based on where the company is going. So that when the company delivers that feature, they've already developed those relationships, right? So how do we enable them? What do they need from us? That's one of the things that I've seen many times is sales saying, I don't know what was delivered. I don't understand the feature. How am I going to get training? What is the process for this? And Did we build that in on the other side? If we put quality in the middle and sales is on this side, did we build that in on this side to be able to communicate? What is the pipeline for them? Same thing with marketing. What is the pipeline for them? How are we engaging? Product and engineering are really close on that circle, right? And then you've got customer experience over here sitting closer to sales. Marketing and product and sales are sitting closer to each other. So how do you engage if you sit quality in the very middle of that? How does quality become a conduit for these conversations when they need to cross that sphere? What's the boat to cross the pond, if you will, to help and enable them to lead and succeed? And so a culture of quality is looking at all of that and saying, all right, how do we empower and enable others in their space? How do we create quality for them? What does quality look like for them and their deliverable, and what do they need, and how do we connect all of the different departments and teams and people?
I I am absolutely in agreement with whatever you said, and in fact, you said the same thing. In
No,
fact,
woohoo! Because I don't remember what I wrote.
I remember that conversation because that was one conversation, and a big shout out to Sarah Miller for
Yes.
initiating that conversation. I think, and she asked a lot of very good questions as follow up, so that a lot of views were expressed on that. People
Mhm.
came out with their vision and their thoughts about the culture of quality, and it was very meaningful. So
It was a good chat. I do remember
yeah,
that.
it was, and it is chats like these which help us understand the different perspectives. So again, thank you, Tristan, for setting up that community, and thank you for being the awesome what does he say? What does he call himself? Stage mom that you are.
Stage mom. Yes. My goodness. I've never met anybody as amazing as Tristan is. He's one of my absolute favorite people and adore him. He is a connector of humans, good humans, just
Yeah. And the best part about talking to Tristan is there is never a hi or a hello in the conversation. It's like it's like you jump on a call, and it seems like, okay, it is a continuation of a previous call. It's like that. It's like you wouldn't even bother asking how are you or
are
anything.
you?
It starts from just somewhere, and it just
And
flows.
yeah, it does. It does. Oh, and what Tristan would do right now?
Yeah.
Love you, Tristan.
Well, awesome. Well, okay, so I want to move to a different segment. I know we've had a serious conversation about testing and stuff, but let's go to a fun section and do a rapid fire with you.
Oh,
I'll ask you a few questions. You have 5 seconds to think about an answer. And if, if it is
thank
a multiple
you.
choice question, then you will have to give reasons for your choice. Okay, so the first question: imagine that COVID is gone. There is no travel ban anymore. What's the first place you're visiting?
Germany.
Where in Germany, or the entire country, Germany? Different
Uh,
places.
Vilsec. That's where my mom is. And I grew up overseas. I spent my formative years in Germany. Loved the country. Had so many great experiences there. Said I was going to raise my children there, and I haven't been back. And she went back almost 3 years ago now, and I was supposed to go last year, COVID, and I have been so sad because I really wanted to go. So I would go to Germany, see my mom, and visit the country and travel like to Amsterdam right now, especially because it's amazing in spring. It's absolutely gloriously beautiful.
I'm right in the neighborhood, so yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right.
No, you said
So then
Germany. I'm
I'd
like,
come and
yeah,
visit you too.
that's not too far. Germany is not too far.
No,
So,
I'd come and visit you too.
well, great. Okay, so your favorite food?
I hesitate because technically it's shrimp, but in the last few years, I have become sporadically allergic to it. But my mom loves to tell of her favorite story about us traveling back from overseas somewhere at the time, and I was sitting on her lap, and so it was just one lunch. And this is when airlines served real food to everybody, and it was a shrimp meal. And she thought that I would eat the rice and some of the vegetables, but I took one bite of the shrimp and I ate the entire meal by myself. And I've loved shrimp since then. And she was very mad because she was hungry by the time she got off of the 11-hour flight, because she didn't eat anything.
Oh,
Shrimp, my favorite food.
that's a good one. Okay, so you've been speaking at so many conferences. Has there been okay, so what's been the most awkward experience as a speaker?
Oh, I spoke at Odyssey a while back, and I've only done conferences virtually. And so I've had the benefit of like being able to see chat and engage kind of and bring that into the conversation, and seeing, okay, like, is what I'm saying interesting? Are you guys listening? Is anybody there? And the chat there, when I first joined, the chat was a separate window. And so that I started my presentation, and initially I saw a few people trickle in, but like 5. And then the chat went silent. And so I'm talking, and like I would have a question and I'd look over to the chat and like, nobody's, oh gosh, nobody's there. Nobody's hearing me. Nobody cares. I was like, oh my goodness, this is not landing. And I still have 30 minutes to go on this talk. Oh my goodness. And so I'm trying to keep my energy up and go through the conversation, and still semi-engaged. And there were a couple of points where I was like, nope, don't engage there, because nope. But thankfully I got to the end of the talk and I clicked on the chat, and this chat said, and I was like,
Just exploded. Yeah.
it had just been going, and I just couldn't, because it wasn't the active window. Oh my goodness. I was happy but frustrated by that, because I know it impacted my energy for the talk and engagement. But it was awkward during that, because I was so worried that it just wasn't landing. I was like, are people just like coming in and popping out like, this is horrible, and walking away? So bad.
Well, I had a similar experience in a virtual talk that I gave last year, and I mean it was worse. Okay, so because uh, the I was talking about why the test strategy of the FANG companies. We idolize them. We say, okay, if it works for Facebook, it should
Mm-hmm.
probably be my strategy too. Oh, Facebook is doing so well; they're making so much money, so they are doing things right. So why their strategy may not be the right thing for me is something that I was talking about. And I thought that it was a good topic, and I had initially good reactions from the event organizers saying, oh, this is nice. And then I went and started talking about it, and I'm getting no reactions. Okay, no reactions, because the chat window is, I can see the chat window and there is no reaction. But I finished my talk and still there is no reaction. Okay, after I finish my talk. So the host, he thinks of a question and he asked me that question because, I was waiting for questions at the end. And then later, I get an email with a bunch of questions saying that, for whatever reason, people could not ask in the chat. And
Oh no.
bundle them up and send them over. And I was like, okay, this also happens.
Yeah. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Whew. That's
So
stressful.
yeah. So I understand exactly when you see that there is no reaction happening to your conversation. And
Is
and what
anybody
I
here?
what I've started doing lately is, so uh, I normally ask the organizers as to how they want to take the questions, if they want to take it in the end, and if they say that they want to take it in the end, then I deliberately, instead of leaving 5 minutes for the audience questions, I leave at least 10 or sometimes even 12 minutes for the
Mhm.
questions, because I know exactly how I feel when my question in a conference talk goes unanswered.
Yeah.
I feel terrible about it that I asked this question, and the speaker did not have the opportunity or the time to answer it. I don't want others to be in that situation. So I cut down my talk to like a TED talk, like make it 18 minutes. And then if it's a 30 minutes thing, and then the 12 minutes goes to audience. I do it
Right.
on purpose. I do it really fast. So in one of the conferences, I think you also spoke in that conference. It was TestFest USA last year. I
Oh,
think,
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So that's where I did that, and the organizer was like, he's messaging me, he's messaging me on my phone and saying, "You finished it really quickly." It's like, yeah, I want the audience to ask questions, and I can see a lot of questions in the window
Mm-hmm.
already. So that's
That's
well,
awesome.
well, yeah, that's something that I've learned and works well for me. So
I love it. No, I love it. I love it.
well, so let's go back to our conversation on testing, and I have a couple more questions
Okay.
before I let you go. Uh, so for any young tester, who's just started the journey into the world of testing and quality, what are some of the tips that you would like to give them?
Mm. Advocate for quality. Uh, Advocate for your role. You mentioned that you should, like, that manual testing is not dead, and that it's that you have responsibilities, but you might have to tell them what they are. Don't let the organization or leadership box you in, because it's the perception. It's where they are, what they think quality is. But if you take the opportunity to say, I can do this, I can step into this conversation, let me help here, they're not going to say no. They're not going to be like, no, you don't belong here. No, you shouldn't help in this way. They're going to take the help. They're going to say, oh, I didn't consider this as a way that you would help. I didn't consider that it would be valuable for you to be in this conversation and that you would provide this type of feedback. You have to show up to the conversation and be willing to do more than what they are expecting, because their expectation is going to be lower when it comes to manual testing, when it comes to testing in general. Don't allow them to box you in. If there's a space that you believe that you can provide value in, or if there's a thing that you need that's going to provide value for your role, speak up and step in.
Absolutely. I think that's a very good tip. Most importantly, the word that you mentioned in the end, or the phrase, speak up. I mean,
Hmm.
that's one big message we try and give people as a part of the test chat community, which I'm a part of, is that people should speak up and speak out.
Hmm.
There are a lot of places where testers come and say, "Oh, you know what? They are not listening to us." Well, they will listen only if you speak up.
That's right. You have to
how
keep doing it.
long how long can somebody just ignore? If you keep speaking up, if you keep talking about things, if you keep advocating for quality, how
Yes.
long can somebody, unless they have a permanent plug in their ears which is not going to come out, well,
Yeah.
so that's the only way of shutting you down. But very good tip. Thank you, Erika. I think that's going to help a lot of young testers. Uh, my last question to you:
Mm.
if you were not doing what you're doing right now, if you were not into development or testing, what else would you be doing?
I would be building and running my community of youth centers. I've had a passion since I was since I came back from overseas. We had youth centers over there. Um, and when I came back, I it wasn't a thing that existed here. And I didn't know how to get to my friends. I didn't know how to make new friends because I didn't know where they were. Until I got into school. And then on the weekends, I was like, this was before cell phones. No, I'm not old, but this was before every kid had a cell phone. And on the weekends, it was like, well, where do I go to meet up with my friends? It's like calling around to try to find people. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Versus being able to go to a place where I had autonomy and freedom to be a teenager or a preteen, but my parents had the safety of knowing that I was in a space that I was safe. Um, and we don't have that. And so coming back from Europe, Germany specifically, and military family where they had these youth centers at these bases where they would do meetups and have dances, and we knew each other when we have competitions and stuff like that. And coming back to the States and not having that, very early on, I realized, like, when I did get into pockets of kids, I realized, oh, y'all are all in corners doing stuff you shouldn't be doing. And it's because they didn't have anywhere safe to go, um, with that safety and oversight, but still giving them the autonomy or just things to do. And so I will be, and that's been my passion and dream, is to build my youth centers and bring back programs like home ec, or have a incubator for teens to become entrepreneurs, and finance programs, but also a place where they can just come and hang out with game rooms and pool tables and arcades, and just the place where they come and chill.
That is such a unique thought. I think that also sets or paves the way for the youth to get into the right direction,
Yeah.
and of course brings them together. So that is
Yep.
such a wonderful thought, and I'm sure you're going to do that one day and rock with it as well, like just like you have been doing. I want to thank you so much for your time today.
Thank
It
you.
was such a pleasure talking to you. I know the conversation can go on longer and longer, but then I have already been working on plans for doing a chapter two with speakers who have appeared on the show, because every conversation it seems like, okay, we can talk a lot more,
Mhm.
and when it comes to subjects like testing and quality, I mean, I know that you can go on for hours, and so can I. So, so with that hope of doing a chapter two soon, and with my best wishes,
Yeah.
and hope for a wonderful weekend ahead of you. I want to thank you for being on TesterSpeak,
Thank
and we will speak soon. Thank you
Yes,
so
I
much, Erica.
thank you. I enjoyed this. I appreciate the honor, the opportunity, and it was an honor to be able to speak with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much.